Failure, not an option. Defeat, not an option. Giving in to the Republicans, not an option. Delaying a system that you know is broken and jacked up and could be very, very, very embarrassing, not an option? Let's talk about that next on this edition of Get Right with Lenny McAllister, coming up right
now. Get Right with Lenny McAllister.
I see.
Now that's power. Tell me about it. I just hear that name and I shudder. Ooh.
The way we help bring back America and we build the bridges and bring people together is by making sure we hold everybody accountable in a 360 fashion. So let me close with this. Yes, there is a change that we can believe in, but it will never come from a politician or a government program.
We cannot find physical sanity here in the land of Lincoln from Carbondale to Elgin that we can collectively continue to tolerate the insanity found on the streets of South Chicago and East St. Louis, Illinois.
We got to move away from the American Idol soundbite nature of politics and back to the American statesman of humble servant leadership that we used to see in politics. It is time to roll out the era of the new, educated, engaged, and energized American citizen. I go do the jail ministry. I speak to the kids in the streets. So I'm never going to lay down being conservative just as much as I'll never lay down being a proud African American.
I feel like a black republic. Money I got coming in. Can't turn my back on the hood. I got love for them. Can't clean my act good. Too much thugging now.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. You know what this is. It's another edition of the podcast, Get Right with Lenny McAllister. It's me, Lenny McAllister. It's you and me talking on Twitter. You know the handle, LennyMcAllister. On Facebook, I'm making it very, very simple for you. Go to tinyurl.com/Lenny page. That is very simple. tinyurl.com/LennyPage. Now, isn't it a good thing that I did not misspell my own name and the URL for you to go to? Because I do want your feedback. I do enjoy hearing from you. I will be taking questions later on this week, and we'll get to some of the comments. I think that's what we'll do on Friday. Unless there's some kind of breaking news, I think we'll go with some of the comments on Twitter for the week. Maybe we'll do that as a regular segment like we're doing with the Global Grind articles once a week, as we're doing with AURN with the McAllister Minute, and looks as though we're trying to put together something new and improved and exciting and fun, some new video for you. So stay tuned to that. I'm working with a good producer over there at the American Urban Radio Network. So I would love to have an opportunity for you to get a chance to catch those as well. So stay tuned. I'll give you more information as it comes up. We'll probably tweet something and get some feedback, or just let you know we're rolling it out and get you involved in that conversation as well. But I want to jump into this Kathleen Sebelius interview on CNN and all the feedback that she's been giving in regards to the rollout of Obamacare. It's interesting because, not that this is the very first thing that I really wanted to talk about. So I'm not going to stay on it long, but I will bring it up. People know how messed up this rollout has been. And I know that there are progressives that are saying it's not that bad. I read something online earlier today that talked about the rollout of the Medicare plan in the 2000s under Republicans in Congress, under a Republican president, and saying that that was messed up too. Now, I'm not saying that there haven't been issues previously with other rollouts, but you got to admit, Medicare, Medicare Part D, it's not the same. It's not the same as Obamacare. We're talking about, and granted, we're still talking about billions of dollars, but we're talking about a completely different gist. Not just something that you can enroll into if you want to. I mean, even the premise of it, you have to enroll in this. So by the compulsion of the law, you're going to have more numbers that should be involved in this one way or another. That's one thing that is going to bring a volume inequality when you compare the two situations. Number two, you're still talking about 10 years later, basically. You're talking about 10 years more of technology. Now, it's not America's fault that the Obama administration and Ms. Sebelius decided to use technology from the 2000s to try to do this system. especially knowing all of the complexities that were going to be involved in this. That's their fault. That's their choice. But with that said, I mean, there are certain things that you just cannot compare with the 2000s to now, or at least you shouldn't. I understand that things will have some problems, but not these types of problems, which gets to what I was going to say initially, that I'm not going to focus on long. I thought it was pretty interesting that one of the questions brought up to the former governor of Kansas was the fact that, hey, did President Obama, a native son of Kansas, if you will, and, through by way of his mother and his grandparents, did he ask you for your resignation? And the way she danced around it, I mean, he probably did ask for that resignation, or decided that it would be embarrassing to him as well, which it would have been. To ask for her resignation at this point in time would be embarrassing to the administration, would be embarrassing to her, and would be embarrassing to Obamacare, which would basically provide the platform for Republicans to say, get rid of it completely. Not even go towards this 1 year delay that they've been talking about for the last couple of months, or actually since September, in full throat, concert, if you will. It would create a situation, and love your feedback on what you think about this. It would create a situation where, long story short, now the chorus sings, if he's getting rid of Sebelius, and it's this messed up, with all the other stuff that we'll talk about in just a second, why are we doing this at all? It goes right back to repeal Obamacare, which that didn't lead to very good national conversations over the last couple of years, now did it? So I thought it was interesting that she was asked that question, because I think the answer was yes. That was discussed. But what do you do at that point in time? You allow her to resign in October, and it's a huge headache because you ask for a resignation to prove that you're laying down the law with this, but you still have this huge mess. Who's going to want to get hired into that position once you get rid of Sebelius right now? So I just thought it was interesting that the question was asked, and the way she answered it, I thought was interesting. Now, several other just flat out answers and thoughts on this coming from the Obama administration and coming from the former governor of Kansas, Kathleen Sebelius. Number one, delaying Obamacare was not an option. Are you serious? Did she really, did those words really come out of her mouth? Delay was not an option. Did the sentiment even cross her mind? I mean, again, I told you about this yesterday when it came to the unemployment numbers, and I'm going to say the same thing when it comes to Obamacare. Delaying is not a 7-letter word. It's an 8-letter word. But you could still replace it with the other 7-letter word we were talking about yesterday, which is fallacy. It's a fallacy that delaying Obamacare was never an option, because you've already delayed parts of Obamacare, or you've let people completely get out of Obamacare completely. You've given them the escape route from members of Congress to certain constituents of members of Congress, or Democratic leaders in Congress, or some unions, which are constituencies that help fund Democratic leaders in Congress. So to sit there and hear her say in an interview that delaying Obamacare was not an option is, I don't want to say it's a lie, but it's the opposite of the truth. And it's not like the gray, fuzzy, kind of, sort of, kind of true, kind of not true opposite of the truth. It's just a pretty much black and white opposite of the truth. Because you've already seen delays in Obamacare. They did not want to delay the whole Obamacare law. Now, some other things that I thought were just interestingly enough, and I blotched that, but whatever. I thought it was interesting to hear some of the things that were being purported as truth aside from that. For example, I know you're saying, like what, Len? Like what? Well, okay, number one, with the delay. Number two, we're going to bring in the A-team now. Like, BA and the music's going to play and the chopper's going to come in and I Pity the Fool is going to come back. No. Why are you bringing in the A-team now? You're telling me, and this is the case that has been made by conservatives for quite some time when it comes to the technical rollout of Obamacare. If you're telling me that you knew in 2010 that this law was passed, you're telling me that you knew in 2012 that the Supreme Court upheld it. You're telling me that you knew after November 2012 that you had the numbers to keep this in play. Even if you go by the thing that happened the most recently, you still had roughly a year to have your A team involved in this process. And give me your feedback on Twitter and Facebook. If you take it back to the Supreme Court decision, you've had over a year. If you take it back to 2010 when the law was passed in an extremely hyper-partisan fashion through parliamentarian tricks to get it through, to get a law through that, you got to read the law before you understand all the things that are in the law, as we so eloquently remember from former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Even if you go back there, now you're talking about 3+ years because that law was passed in April of 2010. And if you go back even further, you're not going to sit there and tell me that the Democrats were not working for a supermajority in the Senate without knowing that they wanted to pass health care reform that was either single payer or something that now has become Obamacare. That was the whole purpose of getting the supermajority. And then when they lost the supermajority, when Scott Brown screwed up their plans, they had to go through the parliamentarian tricks in 2010 to get this passed. So, in essence, you've known since 2009 that you wanted to do this. So even if you're not putting the programming nuts and bolts into place right away, you're doing the planning. You have the blueprints that you're starting to draft and analyze and modify so that you can put things into the testing environment so that you can test them and then put them into the production environment. So you basically, if you do this right, have 4 years of the A-team being involved. Now you're telling me you're bringing in the A-team? I pity the fool who believes that. We know that's not true. So we know that delaying Obamacare was not an option is not true. You've already delayed parts of Obamacare. We know that bringing in the A-team at this point in time to fix what's wrong is not true. The A-team was already hired, or they got A-team money. They got A-list money for a bad movie. I tell you that. So listening to her in this interview talk about these things, or even if you go into the 5 million lines of code, if you go into the fact that some of the providers are not happy with the information that's coming from the back end, and that's the thing I've been telling folks. I had an opportunity to talk to a fellow political pundit earlier before he did some television this morning. Won't call out his name. Good friend of mine. Love him as a child of God. If the technical aspect of this is bad on the front end, there's 2 questions you got to ask. I won't even go into the second part, which I've said repeatedly, which is what does the bureaucracy look like behind it? I'll just focus on the technical aspect of it. Usually, the problems are on the back end. The problems are with the databases. The problems are with how information is disseminated to subsequent systems. It's not even so much how you log in. Usually you can log in. Usually you can get certain places. And then you find out a month later that they didn't get this piece of information. They didn't get a birth date. They didn't get a blood type. All of the location information is off. It only got half of your medical record or anything along those lines. That's what you usually see with computer systems, computer glitches. You can't even log into this system half the time, or you can't even get all your information in. Now, that to me, if it's jacked up on the front end, we know what it probably looks like on the back end, which is why the providers were complaining about it, which then gets to what does the bureaucracy look like on the back end. So these are things that the head of HHS knows about before this gets rolled out October 1st, 2013. And again, it goes back to what I said yesterday, or actually it was Monday. When you have the project manager in chief sitting here and playing this half politics, half IT rollout, all one hot big mess. And then you hear, well, we couldn't delay it. Why? You couldn't delay it as politicians. You had an obligation to delay it as leaders, And even as the project manager in chief, there was an obligation to take whoa, Betsy, let's take a break. Let's do this. Let's do this May of 2014. That way, the individual mandate penalty doesn't hit you until after the midterm elections if you don't enroll. Gives us a chance to fix the system more. Gives us a chance to create a little bit more buy-in. Maybe we tweak some things from the policy perspective to get the Republicans off our back so maybe we can win a couple more elections. Now, I'm not a Democrat, but I'm giving this advice out for free. These are some of the things that you could have done while covering up the fact that the computer system that you're going to use to introduce this to not just the United States, but to the world, because this is a world embarrassment. So the technology that you're using to introduce this system to the world, you could have hid these mistakes. You could have hidden, for the sake of proper grammar, you could have hidden this embarrassment. You could have saved yourself from having to explain these things. But no. You can't do that because you can't prove Ted Cruz right. And I'm not on a Ted Cruz train. All I'm saying is he had a point. He did it wrong as far as going about proving his point. But the point was still valid. This is not ready for prime time. So to sit here and listen to her say we couldn't delay it, that was a political decision, not a technology decision. We're bringing in the A-team. That's a mark of bad leadership if that's really, really, really the case. Because you've already spent millions of dollars and still need to replace 5 million lines of code. So that's number 2. And we've already gone through several of those, and I want your feedback on this. But to sit here and hear these things coming from the HHS head, the former governor of Kansas, this is what people have issues with, that government can't do these types of things without going too far. And here's the real problem I have with what apparently does seem to work when it does work with Obamacare. Anybody ever notice, and this is one of the things that people talked about and complained about, but you don't hear too much about right now because they got buried in the government shutdown, debt ceiling fight, Republican split, and glitches of Obamacare, and now the explanation from the president and Ms. Sebelius. What's the big deal about having to get all of the personal information right away? I mean, that is not an intentional gaffe in design, if you ask me. It's not an intentional gaffe in design that an individual's information is asked for first before they can go shop in the marketplace. Now, if you agree, disagree, let me know. I'm wrapping it up fairly soon. But I have a problem with this. And the reason why I have a problem with this is because this sounds more like how the Obama administration ran the Obama campaign than it does about providing a service for the American people. Hey, if we get their name, their number, their email address, how old they are, what they like, where they shop. I mean, not saying they ask for all that on Obamacare, but that's the type of line of reasoning and questioning and prying and prodding that the Obama administration / Obama campaign, because they are kind of one and the same, aren't they? He's never stopped campaigning. And when you're a lame duck president, you should at least stop campaigning by that point in time. Go lead. Asking for all that information, the way that this system apparently does up front, sounds more like how the Obama campaign did their things than how the Obama administration should be rolling out this system. And I have a problem with that. That does sound too Big Brother to me. Let people shop. Let them see what they like, and then let them volunteer their information. You know, I talk to people from time to time, and, you know, we talk about how, and you know, believe it or not, I do talk to people from time to time. I have friends too, you know. Anywho, there was a time when your Social Security number was private, that you don't just give it out to anybody. You can make that case about a lot of other things in life as well. But anywho, it's different now. It's very different now. And I think that people are too chummy with how this system was designed. So aside from the fact that it's broken, aside from the fact that people didn't understand the law when they passed it, aside from the fact that they had to have all kind of hyper-partisanship in order to pass the law and skirt regular order, and that's the other thing we heard constantly over the last several weeks. Well, let's get back to regular order. The Republicans took this out of regular order. Wasn't Obamacare passed out of regular order as well? Don't give me that either. I don't want to hear that. Everybody wants to be in pocket except for when they need to step outside of pocket. And I don't care if it's either side of the aisle. In this instance, definitely been the Democrats. So, with a system with all these things out of whack, out of order, out of regular order when it comes to the legislative process, now you have a design that wants all your information up front and then can't even get you to the marketplace. But they have all your information. I bet you, I would not be surprised. By the way, remember the Obama administration doesn't want to release some of these records, at least at this point in time. I would not be surprised whatsoever if they did find a way to scrape off at least your contact information so that 6 months from now, you're on some email address, you're on some type of phone banking list or something along those lines for the midterm election so that they can get control of the House of Representatives. Rahm Emanuel, former chief of staff, mayor of Chicago, said it best. Never let a good crisis go to waste. And I bet you it's the same thing right now. I don't like the design. I don't like the explanations from the president. I don't like the explanations from HHS head Kathleen Sebelius. I don't like where this is going. Now, I'm not saying repeal Obamacare 100%. I've told you time and time again there are certain things in this law that do make sense, from pre-existing conditions to expanding who can be on good health care plans that are already in place. However, when you look at the explanations, when you look at what's going on with the project manager in chief, when you see how they're trying to make this a political game and it's getting worse, the explanations, the politics, and everything else, you got to ask yourself a question. When do we hit bottom with Obamacare? I don't think we're there yet. And that's just from the rollout perspective. This needs to be rethought. What do you think? I'd love to get your feedback on that. I can continue doing this for a while, but I want to hear back from you. You know where to find me on Twitter, LENNYMCALLISTER. You know where to find me on Facebook. In the meanwhile, we will chat tomorrow. Keep sending those questions and comments, and we'll get a chance to vibe and respond to those later on this week. In the meanwhile, you take care of yourself. You know I love you. TCNGB, take care and God bless. Peace.